Here's something nobody tells you about gardening. The laziest season of the year is also the most productive one. I'm serious. Everything you plant in spring, you fight for. You water it, you fuss over it, and you lose half of it to squash bugs and 3 weeks of 100-degree afternoons. Then fall comes around, and most people pull everything out, look at the empty beds, and call it a year. That's the mistake. Down here in Zone 8B, fall is when the garden finally gets easy. The weather does your watering. The cold kills the pests that spent all summer eating your tomatoes. Weeds basically stop. And a whole category of vegetables actually gets better when it gets cold. Sweeter, not tougher, which is the exact opposite of what happens in July. So today I'm giving you 12 vegetables you can put in the ground over the next few weeks, and then more or less walk away from. Not 12 that are possible, 12 that genuinely do not need you. Some of these you plant one time, and they come back on their own, year after year, without you doing anything at all. Stick around for number 12 especially, because that one doesn't just feed you. It feeds your soil all winter, for free, while you do absolutely nothing. Before the list, I need to explain why this works, because it changes how you think about the whole season. When temperatures drop below about 40 degrees, cold hardy plants do something clever. They convert the starch stored in their leaves and roots into sugar. Sugar lowers the freezing point of the water inside the plant's cells. It's antifreeze. The plant is protecting itself. But sugar is also, well, sugar. So a carrot pulled in December tastes noticeably sweeter than the same carrot pulled in September. Kale after a hard frost is a completely different vegetable than kale in August. That isn't garden folklore, it's chemistry, and for the only time all year, it is working in your favor. The second thing that happens is that pest pressure collapses. Squash bugs, hornworms, aphid explosions, spider mites. All of that is a warm weather problem. By November, most of it is simply gone. You are not going to be out there with a spray bottle. You are not going to be hand-picking anything off the underside of a leaf at 7 in the morning. And third, rain. In most of the South, fall and winter are when the rain finally comes back. You may not water an established fall bed more than a handful of times all season. Put those three together, and you get a garden that grows food while you're inside. That's the whole pitch. Let's plant it. Number 1, and honestly, the king of this entire list, garlic. Garlic is the most plant it and forget it crop that exists. You push cloves into the ground in October or November, pointy end up, about 2 inches deep and 6 inches apart. You cover them with a few inches of mulch, and then you do nothing until June. Not a little maintenance, nothing. No watering once the rains start, no feeding, no pest control, no staking. It sits in the cold all winter, which it actually needs. Garlic requires a cold period to split a single clove into a full bulb. Then it wakes up in spring and does the work while you're busy planting tomatoes. 2 things worth knowing. First, plant hardneck varieties if you want the scapes in spring. Soft neck if you want bulbs that store for the better part of a year. Down here in the heat, soft neck generally does better. Second, do not plant grocery store garlic. It's frequently treated to stop it sprouting, and it's often a variety grown for a completely different climate. Get seed garlic. 8 months of patience, and 1 clove becomes a whole head. That's the trade. On quantity, work backwards from how you cook. A head of garlic is usually 8 to 10 cloves, and every clove you plant returns 1 head. So if your household goes through 2 heads a month, 24 cloves covers your year with a little margin. That's roughly 3 heads of seed garlic and about 8 feet of row. People routinely plant 4 times that, run out of space for everything else, and then find braided garlic in the garage the following August. Number 2. Onions that replant themselves. I'm talking about multiplying onions, potato onions, and Egyptian walking onions. These are perennial. You plant them once, and they divide underground, and next year there are more of them than you started with. Then more the year after that. Walking onions are the strangest and the best of them. Instead of flowering, they produce a cluster of little bulbils at the top of the stalk. The stalk eventually gets top-heavy, bends over, and plants that cluster a foot away from the parent. That's why they're called walking onions. They slowly wander across your bed, replanting themselves as they go. You will never buy green onions again. You cut what you need through the whole winter, the clump keeps dividing, and in 3 years you'll be giving them away. Plant a dozen bulbs this fall in a corner of a bed where you won't disturb them, and that corner is now permanently productive. This is the crop that best explains the whole video. One afternoon of planting, and then it just keeps handing you food. Number 3, collard greens. And if you skip everything else on this list, don't skip this one. There is a reason collards are the signature green of the South, and it isn't only tradition. Collards are genuinely one of the toughest vegetables you can grow. They shrug off heat when you plant them, they shrug off frost when it arrives, and in Zone 8B, they will stand in the garden all the way through winter and into spring without any protection at all. You harvest them the same way you harvest kale, outer leaves only, never the growing point in the center. Take 3 or 4 of the big lower leaves off each plant and leave the crown alone. The plant keeps pushing new growth from the middle. A row of 6 collard plants set out in September will feed a family from November until it bolts in the spring. And like everything else here, frost improves them. Collards picked after a couple of hard nights are sweeter and less bitter. If you have only ever eaten collards from a can, a frost-sweetened leaf out of your own garden is a genuinely different food. Space them wider than feels right, 2 feet apart. They get enormous, and crowded plants stay damp and invite mildew. Number 4, kale. Kale is the crop that turned into a whole video on this channel because it's the clearest example of the thing I keep telling you. Kale in August is tough and a little bitter. Kale in January, after the cold has done its work, is tender and sweet. Sow seed in late August or September and pick only the outer leaves. The plant grows from the center, so as long as you leave the crown, it keeps producing for months instead of once. Most people pull their kale right before it gets good. One honest warning: 1 seed packet is more kale than a family can eat. I say that as somebody who has learned it the hard way. 6 plants is plenty. Plant a whole packet and you'll be handing bags of it to neighbors by December, which is fine, but you could have used that space for something else. Dinosaur kale, the one with the long, bumpy blue-green leaves, holds up best down here. Red Russian is sweeter and slightly less cold tolerant. Either one will outlast your enthusiasm for eating kale. Quick note that applies to both collards and kale because it trips people up. The cabbage family, that's collards, kale, cabbage, broccoli, all of that, germinates badly in hot soil. If you're sowing seed directly in late August down here, you're asking them to sprout in ground that's still near 90 degrees, and germination gets patchy. Either start them in trays somewhere shaded and set the transplants out in September, or wait for the soil to cool and direct sow in early October. Both work. Fighting the heat doesn't. Number 5, carrots. Specifically, carrots you leave in the ground. Here's the part that surprises people. You do not have to harvest carrots when they're ready. In a mild winter climate, the soil itself is your storage. Sow carrots in September, let them size up through the fall, and then simply pull them as you need them all the way through February. They keep getting sweeter the longer they sit in cold soil. A carrot you pull on Christmas morning is better than the same carrot in October. Mulch over the row with a few inches of straw, and the ground won't freeze hard enough to matter in Zone 8B. The one thing carrots ask for is a bed without rocks or clods, because anything hard in the way makes them fork. And be patient with germination. Carrot seed is slow, and it needs the surface kept damp for the first couple of weeks. That's the only fussy fortnight in the whole crop. After that, forget them. If your soil runs heavy or you're working with clay, skip the long, slender varieties. Danvers is the easy one to find, and the short, blunt types like it will push through ground that would leave a long, thin carrot bent like a corkscrew. Match the carrot to the dirt you actually have rather than the dirt you wish you had. Number 6, turnips. Turnips are underrated and they are fast. 50 days from seed to a usable root, and you get 2 crops out of one planting, because the greens are as good as the root. Thin the row as they grow and eat the thinnings. They handle frost without blinking. They handle poor soil. They germinate in about 4 days, which after the carrots feels like a miracle. If you want the single easiest root crop for a fall bed, it's this one. Purple top white globe is the old standard, and there's a reason it's still around. If you mainly want the greens, look for one of the 7 top varieties, which are bred to put their energy upward instead of into the root. Number 7, mustard greens. Mustard is what you plant when you want food quickly and you don't want to think about it. Broadcast the seed across a patch of prepared soil, rake it in lightly, and in 3 weeks you're cutting greens. It's peppery in the heat and mellows as it gets cold. It reseeds itself readily, which means one fall planting often gives you volunteer mustard the following year with no effort. Some people consider that a weed problem. In a food garden, a plant that shows up for free and feeds you is not a problem. Cut it at 3 or 4 inches for salad, or let it get big and cook it like collards. Either way, it's the fastest return on this list. Number 8, spinach. And this is the one where the payoff comes later than you'd expect. Spinach sown in October does something most vegetables can't. It germinates in the cool soil, makes a small rosette of leaves, and then essentially stops and waits. It sits there all winter looking like it isn't doing anything. Under the ground, it's building root. Then in February, when the light comes back, it explodes. You get an enormous flush of spinach weeks before anyone who waited until spring to plant has even put seed in the ground. Overwintered spinach is one of the biggest head starts available to a gardener, and almost nobody uses it. The trick is planting early enough that it establishes before hard cold, and then leaving it completely alone. No feeding, no fussing. It looks stalled. It isn't. Bloomsdale Long-Standing is the variety I keep coming back to. The leaves are crinkled and thick, and it handles cold better than the flat, smooth types. If you get a genuinely hard freeze, throwing a light row cover over it for that one night is enough. But most winters here, you won't need to do even that. Number 9, beets. Beets are 2 crops in one planting, same as turnips, the root and the greens. And beet greens are genuinely good, not a consolation prize. Sow in September, thin to about 3 inches, and eat everything you pull while thinning. They're properly cold hardy, they store in the ground the same way carrots do, and the roots sweeten in cold soil. What they mostly want is not to be crowded. Each beet seed is actually a little cluster that produces several seedlings, so thinning isn't optional here. If you skip it, you get a row of tangled marbles instead of beets. Detroit dark red is the reliable one. There is also a candy-striped Italian one, pink and white rings all the way through, that is beautiful raw and fades when you cook it. It's worth growing at least once just to cut one open. Both handle the cold the same way. Number 10, Swiss chard. If I had to pick one plant on this list for somebody with a single container and no confidence, it would be chard. It is nearly impossible to kill. It handles heat, it handles frost, and in a zone 8B winter, it will keep producing without any cover at all. It's cut and come again in the truest sense. Take the outer stalks, leave the center, and it regrows for months. 6 plants will produce continuously from October into spring. And because the stems come in that ridiculous range of colors, it's one of the few vegetables people plant partly because it's beautiful. Chard is in the same family as beets, which is why the leaves taste related. Plant it once in the fall, and it will still be feeding you when you're starting your spring seeds. Number 11, and this one genuinely surprises people. Cilantro. Almost everybody plants cilantro in spring, watches it bolt to seed in 3 weeks, and concludes they're bad at growing cilantro. You're not bad at growing cilantro. You planted it in the wrong season. Cilantro is a cool season crop. Heat is the trigger that makes it bolt. Plant it in October, and it does the opposite of what you're used to. It grows slowly, stays leafy, and keeps producing right through the winter. You can be cutting fresh cilantro in January, while it would have been dead by May. And it reseeds. Let a few plants go to seed at the end of the season, and you'll get volunteers coming up on their own the following fall. That's coriander seed, by the way. Same plant and worth harvesting. If you want to stretch it even further, look for a variety sold as slow bolt or Santo. They're bred to hold in leaf longer before they run to seed, which in a mild winter can mean cutting cilantro from one planting for 3 or 4 months instead of 1. Number 12. This is the one I told you to stick around for, and it's the only crop on the list you don't eat. Plant a cover crop on any bed you're not using this winter. Crimson clover or Austrian winter peas, or a cheap rye and vetch mix. Broadcast the seed across bare soil in October. Rake it in and walk away. Here's what it does while you do nothing. It covers the soil so winter rain doesn't beat it into a crust and wash it away. Its roots hold the bed together and break up compaction for free. And if you use a legume, clover or peas, it pulls nitrogen out of the air and fixes it into the soil through nodules on the roots. You are manufacturing fertilizer with seed that cost a few dollars. In spring, you cut it down before it sets seed, leave the residue on the surface as mulch, and plant straight into it. The bed you cover cropped will be visibly better than the bed you left bare. Same amount of work? None. Nature never leaves soil uncovered. This is the cheapest way to stop fighting her. Now, the honest part. All of this does take one afternoon of actual work up front, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Pull out whatever's finished. Don't leave diseased tomato vines lying there. Take those out entirely. Then add 2 or 3 inches of compost across the top of the bed. Don't dig it in. Just lay it on the surface and let the worms take it down, which they will. Water the bed well before you plant, not after. And then get your seed and transplants in and mulch everything that isn't a fine seed row, because mulch is what turns this from a garden into a garden that takes care of itself. That's the whole setup. One afternoon in September or October buys you food from November to March. So let's put it together. Screenshot this if it helps. Garlic, plant in October, ignore until June. Multiplying onions, plant once and they replant themselves forever. Collards, the toughest green in the South, sweeter after frost. Kale, outer leaves only, and don't plant a whole packet. Carrots, leave them in the ground and pull them as you need them. Turnips, 50 days, root and greens. Mustard greens, 3 weeks to the first cutting, and it reseeds itself. Spinach, plant in October, look at nothing all winter, harvest a flood in February. Beets, 2 crops, 1 planting. Swiss chard, the hardest plant on this list to kill. Cilantro, you were planting it in the wrong season your whole life, and a cover crop on every bed you're not using, because bare soil in winter is the most expensive free thing in your garden. Here's what I want you to take away. Fall gardening isn't a consolation prize for people who missed spring. It's the season where the weather stops fighting you. The cold does your pest control, the rain does your watering, and the frost makes half of it taste better. You don't need more time. You need to plant the things that don't ask for any. And if you take nothing else from this, plant the garlic. It's 10 minutes of work. It asks absolutely nothing of you for 8 months. And next June, you will pull whole heads out of the ground and genuinely wonder why you ever bought it. That's the one that turns people into fall gardeners. If this was useful, subscribe. I put out 1 video a week on organic gardening that actually works. No chemicals, no overwhelm, and no pretending it's harder than it is. And tell me down in the comments which one you're planting first and what zone you're in. I read them, and it genuinely helps me know what to make next. Now go get your beds ready. You've got a few weeks.